22 strange phenomena that have yet to be explained. The internet thrives on photos of strange occurrences that are often unexplained, right? While much of what you see online might very well be unexplainable, many seemingly unexplainable phenomena may have perfectly reasonable, scientific explanations. This is one that plenty of people have seen circulating the internet, along with a video that finally surfaced when an explanation came through. Although it seemed like some sort of underwater alien that created this crop circle, similar to what we've seen appear mysteriously in cornfields. It was soon revealed that a fish was responsible. These fish were responsible for creating elaborate sand designs that sit undisturbed at the bottom of the ocean floor. This was a rather disturbing sight for local boat goers in Antarctica as they stumbled upon a glacier that was seemingly leaking what looked like blood. The perceived gore had a perfectly scientific explanation that's understandable through the laws of basic chemistry. Rather than the glacier being injured, the rust coloring of its streaks were caused by salt water that was naturally tainted by iron oxide. This chemical reaction caused the blood red coloring and produced a pretty wild effect. This was one that made the entire world cringe at once. Well, everyone except for spider lovers. Pakistan is known for having some strange and intense weather, and their recent flooding caused quite a few problems not just for humans, but for wildlife as well. One of those affected was the arachnids we all love and hate simultaneously, who took to the trees to avoid the floodwaters. It's nerve-wracking but serves as a perfect example of how nature constantly adapts to change. Not many people have been witness to this type of sunset. While many of us are very familiar with the traditional colors of orange, yellow, red, and even purple that the sun throws when it sets, few know that green is also part of that color range. This is easily explained through light refraction, and as the sun sets and goes through a color transition, a burst of green can be seen during those short few seconds. It's all about how light is perceived through the naked eye. Watching the clouds float in over the mountaintops is an incredible experience that makes you realize just how massive and vast a summit can be. It's humbling in a sense, and sometimes, even the clouds bend to suit the will of a mountain peak. These are called lenticular clouds, and they throw off the appearance of a cloud dome hovering over the summit of a mountain. These clouds can appear anyway and occasionally have a pancake or tube-shaped appearance, but are usually formed when air rises up and condenses. Alternately, they can be a product of wind shear from a weather front. The strangest thing is that they're stationary, which gives them the hat effect. Ready to have your mind blown? The Khatam Bow is the longest storm in the world, lasting 140 to 160 days annually in Venezuela. This monster storm produces up to 280 lightning strikes per day and lasts for roughly 10 hours per day. The storm centers itself over Lake Maracaibo and towers far higher than most typical thunderstorms. They say that lightning doesn't strike in the same place twice, but that doesn't mean storms won't gather in the same place multiple times. It's hard to believe that so many birds could actually cause a blackout-type effect, but it's true. Denmark sees it every year. What seems like something out of the famous Hitchcock film The Birds is actually the natural migration pattern of thousands of starlings. It's been referred to as one of the most magnificent natural phenomena you can witness, as it's amazing that a scale of this many birds flocks to one location simultaneously. It's referred to as Sort Sol in Denmark and lasts roughly 20 minutes, during which the sky appears much darker than usual. The flowering desert in Chile is one of those that seems something akin to Death Valley but holds a surprising secret. Depending on the amount of rainwater that portion of Chile sees in a year, the desert can transform completely. Where sand and dry mountains once stood, following plenty of rainstorms, visitors might return to see blooming bushes and magnificent flora and fauna. It's a reminder that everyone has the potential to bloom and become something beautiful. It's the biggest hole in the world and has been rumored as a dive's paradise. The Great Big Hole in Belize is appropriately named, as it descends 410 feet down into the earth, producing a massive, seemingly endless, hole underwater. It's part of the barrier reef system of Belize and is surrounded by crystal-clear tropical waters, which is what draws experienced divers to its location. This chasm is a result of fault lines, similar to many other seafloor drop-offs in the surrounding area. Chile sees its fair share of natural, yet seemingly unexplainable, events, and volcanic thunderstorms are one of them. When a volcano erupts, it becomes a volatile and unstoppable force. Occasionally, if the conditions are just perfect, energy in the atmosphere can lead to a charge that comes from the bottom and produces energy at the top. This rains back down in a monster thunderstorm that's fueled by the eruption and affected by the conditions in the atmosphere. Stay far away from these. These are relatively common in the US but can really be seen anywhere. A FALLSTREAK hole occurs when conditions in the atmosphere at the cloud level produce holes due to the release of moisture content. In these holes, you can often witness a tiny rainbow if the conditions are just right, leading to a break in the cloud formation that's filled with light and color. They're a pretty, yet explainable, phenomenon. Death Valley is a strange and occasionally place. Not much thrives there unless it's built to survive in the desert, which is what makes this event even stranger. If your timing is on point, you can find yourself in the desert watching rocks move on their own. This isn't because they've suddenly come alive and are living. It's due to an unimaginably thin layer of ice that remains on the ground and allows the rocks to seemingly propel themselves along the ground as it dissipates. Weird, but fair. This glowing effect is also called Milky Seas, and still has scientists somewhat baffled as to what actually produces it. The explanation they've penciled in is due to the bioluminescence of dinoflagellates that throw the unique glowing color. It's intense, to say the least, and though this explanation is one the biology world floats as accurate, there's no definitive proof that this bacteria has the capacity to produce such a glow. Considering it can be seen from space. It's kind of gross sounding, but it's also really cool. Hair ice is what happens when water freezes at just the right temperature and in just the right environment to produce long, thin strands of ice. These strands often form together and have a similar appearance to hair, although they're pure white and shiny. It's a stunning creation from nature and something that isn't seen often, yet does happen in the outdoor conditions allow it. This is something that has scientists somewhat concerned due to the pressure buildup under the frozen tundra that is Alaska much of the time. These bursts of methane become trapped under the surface and frozen in time as the waters in Alaska freeze, thus causing all natural release to become suspended. When the ice begins thawing, all of that methane is released, producing some serious gas that is slightly worrisome. This year has seen some strange things, and whirlpools are one of them. That's right, they're not just from all those stories you read about Cthulhu. In real life, they're called maelstroms, and although they're fascinating to look at, they can also be incredibly dangerous. The pull of these is very real and has the capacity to sink boats and will draw in anything that's bobbing on the surface, as their pull is unbelievably strong. Steer clear of these if you do happen to spot one. You'll only find trees this intensely colored in the southern hemisphere, in none other than Australia. When this species of eucalyptus sheds its outer layers, a bright green layer can be seen underneath. As time passes, this layer begins to change in color, which results in the bright neons that you often find on the outside of this brilliant species. With the right temperature and environmental conditions, this tree has the ability to feature an incredibly vibrant array of color. Horsetail Falls seems like your typical waterfall any other time of the year except in February when it's completely transformed. One day of the year, this magnificent waterfall is hit by a ray of sunlight that hits that spot on Earth at just the right angle to make it appear as though gold is falling rather than water. It's a sight to behold and has only been captured by those lucky enough to visit Yosemite and time their cameras perfectly. This is one that hasn't been researched too much as it's doing no harm and doesn't really need an explanation. The Crooked Forest is a neat travel destination in Poland, as all of its trees have grown at extreme angles and seem to be crooked. It's rumored that this happened as a natural defense against a sandstorm, but plenty of natives have other explanations as well. Regardless of how this forest was formed, it's definitely like something out of Alice in Wonderland. Yet another occurrence that happens every year, Antarctica is uninhabitable but is practically a frozen work of art. The northernmost part of the hemisphere freezes so rapidly that even waves get caught in the deep freeze, which is then frozen in time, serving as aqua-colored walls. While it's a bit nerve-wracking to be standing in front of one of these monstrous icicles, it's humbling to see what nature can truly do when the temperature is just right. What we know to be snow is usually white, powdery, frozen water. However, Europe saw an eerie orange snow, falling like dust from the sky. It wasn't a prediction of the end of days, but it was the combination of a sandstorm as well as a snowstorm. When sand from a storm in North Africa made its way into the atmosphere, it tangled with snow that was simultaneously falling to the ground in Eastern Europe. Definitely strange and unsettling. Another popular exploration location is the underwater waterfall that's found in Mauritius. This waterfall is actually a marvelous optical illusion, and possibly one of the greatest that has been pulled off by nature. The illusion is caused by a drop-off in the sea floor due to a chasm, and the waterfall that visitors are convinced they've seen is actually sand being pulled from the islands and down into the chasm. So rather than water that's flowing,